Hi there, my name is Rose Shards, but feel free to call me Rose, Rosie, Chloe, or whatever you want, honestly. If you guys remember, way back before I made my Hollyleaf video, I asked you guys if I should make my rant topic about Hollyleaf, Mapleshade, or Yellowfang's secret. Though the majority of you guys voted for Hollyleaf, that obviously doesn't mean that the Mapleshade video has been put off the table. I've been dying to make this rant ever since I read Goosefeather's Curse, and I'm excited to finally bring this to you guys. But before I get into the speed paint, I'd like to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Amino. If you don't know, Amino is an app that features hundreds of thousands of unique communities, all designed to bring people together based on their fandoms, interests, and more. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about Warriors Amino. Warriors Amino is a place where fans of the series can talk, share posts, roleplay, play quizzes, take part in polls, and so much more. The community is super active too, so it's a great place to meet new friends. My personal favorite part is just logging on to look at the featured page. It's updated at least once every day and it's really diverse. Whether it's a well-written short warrior story, a plush or figurine, a cool piece of artwork, or anything else related to the series, it can all be found on the featured page at some point. It never gets boring, and a lot of underrated creators get the recognition they really deserve. And to give back to you guys for supporting me and helping me reach 60k, I'm going to be hosting another raffle over there. All you have to do is like the image I'm working on now over on Warriors Amino, and you'll have a chance at winning a drawing from me. If you want to download the app, you can download it for free by searching it up on the App Store or by just clicking the download link below. You can then find me by searching my username, Rose Shards. Again, I'm super excited to be hosting another raffle, so I really hope you guys are able to find the time to enter. Again, all you have to do is like this picture and you're in. Now, onto the speed paint. Rose from the sort of future here. Apparently, my microphone is being a huge butt, so it's really glitchy, and it really affected the audio quality for a lot of this, so I really hope you guys are able to put that aside and still pay attention to what I'm saying. Again, I'm really sorry. I'm going to be looking into this, because obviously I need to be able to record videos, so yeah, back to Rose from the past. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about two things, Mapleshade and the Dark Forest in general. They're really similar, obviously, and a lot of my points will likely overlap, but I also feel like there are some separate things I'd like to point out about these topics. I'll start off by talking about Mapleshade, since she was around before the beginning of the first arc, so we'll kind of be going in chronological order, I suppose. But before I get into this, I would just like to point out a little disclaimer. I love Mapleshade. I love her a lot. I love her personality and how strong, independent, and bold she is. It's also cool to me that she's like the only female villain and is the top of the food chain in the Dark Forest. Even Tiger Star was noted to be somewhat afraid of her at one point. My point is, she's a bad biatch and she's great. I also love how she had a really good motive for doing what she did. I mean, I might have been tempted to do the same thing if that happened to me and I was in the Warriors universe. And the Aarons know that everyone loves this character, which kind of leads me into my rant. She's completely been milked to the point where some of her appearances, such as her little scene in Goosefeather's Curse, have been more annoying than cool or shocking. Okay, maybe she hasn't been totally milked, she's only been in a handful of books, but still. These few appearances have led to some pretty big, unrealistic conclusions. Before I get into the most frustrating conclusion that can be drawn from her random appearances, I would like to talk about the book that angered me so much that I felt compelled to make this video. Goosefeather's Curse. I enjoy reading Goosefeather's Curse, but Mapleshade makes a fairly big appearance in it for no reason I can seem to put together. She's just some creepy mystery cat put in the book for whatever reason. She really adds nothing to the plot. While a few small appearances here and there could have been interesting, perhaps seeing her watching over her former clan with anger and rage as she looks for their weaknesses and plots against them, Goosefeather seeing and being unaware of this but knowing he is unable to say anything about it because he is literally cursed, all these feelings of eeriness and helplessness completely fade away when she becomes a somewhat big character. I mean, she randomly appears during his vision of kitty pets and clan cats fighting to say kitty pets are stronger than you think, despite having had no connection towards kitty pets during her life, appears during another vision to tell him random crap I honestly don't even care about, and then to train him. Like, why would she just randomly train Goosefeather? Goosefeather then sees a vision of her killing Frecklewish and asks if she really did that, as if he would be completely unaware of the nursery tales of Mapleshade that were being told around his time, having been mentioned in Pine Store's Choice. She then says yes, and that she hates ThunderClan, and that she only trained him because he is already cursed by StarClan. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mapleshade honestly would not train a random apprentice who can see the dead just because he is cursed by StarClan. That would be a complete waste of her time, especially if she's trying to work to bring the clans down. Again, if they really wanted to include Mapleshade in the story for whatever reason, they could have had some scenes when she's just stalking the clan, plotting, saying horrible things about how she hopes to kill them even, and Goosefeather is just unable to say anything because of his curse, and feels like despite being a medicine cat, there's no way he can truly protect his clan. Another route they could have taken, which honestly really could have worked out, could have been Mapleshade being nice to Goosefeather in an attempt to manipulate him. He's completely misunderstood by his clan and is seen as a freak, but if Mapleshade comes into his life and reassures him and gains his trust, that could actually work in her favor. Why, you may ask? Because if Mapleshade wants to wreak havoc amongst the clan and StarClan as seen in Omen of the Stars, Goosefeather would have an extremely useful trait to her, the ability to see dead cats. Goosefeather, being led down the wrong path, could pass this seemingly harmless information about the StarClan cats he's observed over to her, Mapleshade then using this to her advantage not only to find ThunderClan's weaknesses, but StarClan's. Maybe Goosefeather could even be temporarily convinced to be evil. I mean, he could be mad at StarClan for cursing him and making him suffer through all of this pain, this encouraging him to help Mapleshade so he feels he can ease his suffering as well. Of course he would realize this is wrong in the end due to some sort of event, but it would have been way more interesting than what we got. In fact, I'm a firm believer Mapleshade did not even need a big role in this novella at all. Their stories don't really connect in any way at all, but anyways, it was extremely disappointing to see a novella where Mapleshade was thrown in randomly for no apparent reason, just because she's popular and the errands most likely figured that people would like seeing her appearance, despite how pointless and ineffective it was. Now, I haven't read Tiger Claw's Fury, so I'm going to keep this section short, but from what I've heard, Mapleshade does train Tiger Claw on some other clan cats. Again, I feel like this was sort of boring, and while Mapleshade would have probably wanted to work with Tigerstar, I also kind of feel like Tigerstar's actions would have been so much more impactful and terrifying had he not been encouraged by any sort of evil spirit, but by himself entirely. To be powered by nothing but your own ambition is a pretty threatening and scary motive in my opinion. But again, I have not read this novella, so I really do not have much to say on this. In fact, what I'm saying could be completely wrong. I'll hopefully read it very soon. But you want to know what I have read? Spotted Leaf's Heart. And you want to know who was in it? Mapleshade. Training Dark Forest cats for whatever reason. I mean, I guess she was hoping to be able to take over the clans from back then, but still. I think that some training and stuff goes on in Crooked Star's Promise if I'm remembering correctly. I haven't really read the book, but I feel like her visiting him at least makes sense, seeing as he's directly related to Appledusk. But outside of that, it's kind of annoying to see her visiting with other cats. While I can completely see Mapleshade having a motive for training people, I just feel like it wasn't great. Mapleshade, in my opinion, seemed like a loner, and that's what made her really interesting to me. She did things her own way, regardless of how it impacted people. I mean, she was able to kill her own mate without feeling any traces of doubt or regret or anything, and that's what made her really cool. She didn't need anyone. But not only this, I also feel like her visiting with other cats kind of weakens her presence in Crooked Star's Promise, if that makes sense. I mean, if she wanted to specifically terrorize him because he was related to Appledusk or whatever, then that makes a lot more sense. But if she's just visiting a ton of random cats just for whatever reason, it's kind of just pointless, and it doesn't really make Crooked Star's situation stand out at all, so that's a little disappointing too, in my opinion. But sure, let's say she started to train cats before the first arc even began. I feel like having this timeline work this way just messed up the rest of the arc up until the Last Hope, which, as you know, I already see as a huge letdown. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the Dark Forest moments that led up to the Last Hope. As long as I'm remembering correctly, Dark Forest meetings and training sessions started in the second arc with Brambleclaw and Hawkfrost. The Dark Forest was trying to get cats to turn evil all the way back then, though of course training groups would have been noticeably smaller. I'll admit it was really intriguing to see Tigerstar come back as a spirit and know he still had the power to destroy the clans if he wanted, as if the clans would never be free from his wrath, so especially when he was supposedly defeated and the clans were living without major bloodshed, it's really cool to see him return. But then the next arc also features a fair amount of Dark Forest training sessions with Lionpaw, stupidly being led astray. And you want to know what? The Dark Forest is getting a little boring at this point, but I think it was at least fairly interesting to see Lionpaw and how his powers could have been used for bad, all because he's a little too dumb to realize what's going on at first. I mean, it's not the most amazingly written thing ever, but I think it was interesting for the most part. And then comes Omen of the Stars, and guess what the main conflict there is? The Dark Forest! For an entire arc, we hear about the Dark Forest training sessions and their plans to take over, and by this time, I am seriously getting annoyed. Again, we have another main character who is manipulated into joining the Dark Forest but has good intentions deep down. This character being Ivypool. Now, where have we heard this before? Oh, that's right, Brambleclaw, Lionblaze, who both trained in the Dark Forest but in the end turned out to be good. Real original. So now, being on the third arc where the Dark Forest plays a big role, things are getting boring and repetitive. The Dark Forest progress has been painfully slow and nothing new really happens. In fact, it's not really even up until Omen of the Stars that we even realize what the Dark Forest fully wants to do. So finally, after an ungodly amount of Dark Forest scenes, we are brought to the Last Hope. Oh boy. The Last Hope battle starts in the last quarter of the book, and of course, ends a fair amount of pages before the book actually ends as well. The huge battle that cats have been planning for years, training sessions dating back to several moons before Into the Wild, is reduced to a mere 30-40 pages if I'm remembering correctly. In fact, it was probably less than that, but I honestly do not want to pick up The Last Hope and skim through it to find out because I am that uninterested in it. I absolutely cannot believe that a battle that has been planned from likely years before Firestar was even born had such a poor, short, miserable climax. It's one thing if it's just a book or two leading up to the battle that lasts a few chapters, but this is years we're talking about. You're really telling me that Mapleshade started training cats 10 years before The Last Hope just to have that battle that probably lasted 3 hours, if even? Absolute bullcrap. There was absolutely too much boring and repetitive build-up to excuse this. It wasn't even worth it in the end. Honestly, the subplots were more well-written and engaging than all of this Dark Forest stuff, and that's really saying a lot, unfortunately. Going back to Mapleshade for a moment, it's a complete disservice to have her start to train Dark Forest cats from the time of Spotted Leaf's Heart at least, to literally have a conclusion that doesn't even last half a book. Mapleshade has proven to be so powerful, manipulative, and ruthless. It's just so disappointing to see that what she's been planning for years alongside Tigerstar just completely go to waste. And I know that obviously the bad guys can't win in the end, but it would have been so much more compelling had the timeline been sped up a little. I personally believe that there is no reason for Mapleshade to even train people before Tigerstar dies, but whatever. Let's just say it's still canon that she's been training people for years beforehand. I think it definitely would have been better to have had training sessions been more condensed into one section of the series, rather than spread out over the course of several arcs. I think that training could have existed before it was really touched on in the series, but once it was introduced, it should have slowly gotten worse and worse before suddenly becoming super intense. Not only would we be put into the same shoes as the characters seeing as they thought it was all fine and dandy until they were suddenly expected to kill people, but it would have made things a lot more upbeat and entertaining. I also believe that a lot of the events from Omen of the Stars and Power of Three could have been merged because that's when the Dark Forest starts to become a real issue, but for the sake of what I'm going to suggest, let's just say it's still two separate arcs. I think that Omen of the Stars could have been so much stronger had the Dark Forest cats taken over halfway during the book. I mean, if the Dark Forest cats actually did get to take over for a while, I feel like a lot of the training sessions wouldn't have been, well, pointless. We wouldn't have had to sit through Dark Forest scene after Dark Forest scene only to get an underwhelming climax. Instead, the training sessions we sat through could have all been worth it. The hard work and dedication of the Dark Forest cats could have paid off, and the heroes would have actually had to find a way to take down the Dark Forest from within. Again, while I probably wouldn't suggest this route if training sessions hadn't been a big deal for as long as they had been, it's ridiculous that the training sessions had been going on for years to lead to such a relatively small battle. Had the Dark Forest cats temporarily taken over, it would have been far more interesting and it wouldn't have felt like all of this time spent planning the battle had gone to waste. Thankfully, I feel like the Errands corrected a lot of these mistakes in A Vision of Shadows, specifically when Darktail's group actually took over for some time. I also just feel like there wasn't really enough of a challenge for the heroes. I mean, it was so obvious that they were going to win. Had they actually been in a moment of despair and helplessness for a book or something like that, as they actually have to find out how they're going to deal with this, it would have just been so much more compelling and emotional. Yeah, in conclusion, Mapleshade and the Dark Forest could have been integrated into the books far more strategically. I feel like a lot of Mapleshade's appearances in novellas and even at certain points in the main series are just really rushed, bland, and kind of weaken her character. I especially feel like the fact that she'd been training cats for a really long time beforehand also weakens her in a sense. All of her efforts just went to complete waste in the end, and the Dark Forest cats lost really easily. It also weakens the rest of the series up until that battle, seeing as it makes the battle even more pathetic. The Dark Forest training stuff and the Dark Forest itself was just really bland and repetitive. It had potential, but The way it was written really could have been a lot better. I'd have much preferred to have had the Last Hope take place far earlier in the series than it did if it was going to be so short. And I'm honestly pretty certain that the Last Hope battle only takes up like 5% of the total Dark Forest training sessions in the entire series, and that's kind of ridiculous in my opinion. We needed more battle time to kind of even things out, but oh well, I guess that's why Dawn of the Clans and A Vision of Shadows were so relieving. The Dark Forest Cat's training wasn't actually an important thing in the plot anymore. Feels good to get away from it after it's been a topic for several arcs and novellas. So yeah, sorry this was kind of all over the place. I hope you guys were able to follow and enjoy regardless. Again, I love Mapleshade and think that the Dark Forest seeking vengeance was really cool, but it was just written in all the wrong ways, unfortunately. I mean, while I'm not really suggesting this, maybe some of the surviving Dark Forest cats can actually make a decent return someday. Or they can all be left alone instead of being further milked, but whatever. Anyways, I'm sort of starting to ramble. If you guys would like a print of this, prints will be $5 off in my shop for 48 hours, and I will have posters available for a few days as well. Also, don't forget to check out this piece on Amino if you'd like to join my raffle. Again, Amino is completely free and you can download it below if you're interested. Anyways, that's all for now. Thank you all so much for joining me. Until my next video,